Yo guys, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are doing awesome as usual, and today we're gonna be continuing our work on the To-Do application, just like usual. And in the last episode we actually implemented the ability to remember the user's last board. So if I switch to another board now, we can see that that is persisted, and that was quite easy. We just added that field to local storage. When we save that, we also save the current board and the board ID rather, and then we can just simply find that board and set it to the current board, and that's it. So I feel like we should continue now on with some more features, some more functionality. If you have any features you would like to see, feel free to comment. It's completely up to you what kind of features you want in your To-Do application, of course. So if you have some cool creative ideas that you want to implement, maybe you don't know how to implement them, feel free to comment and I will try my best to implement them and see how it goes. So feel free to do that. But one feature that I want to implement personally is actually subtasks, so that you can add some subtasks to your tasks. I'm not thinking like super deeply nested, so you have like a subtask of a task of a task of a task. No, just one level nesting. We have subtasks underneath each task. There you can even further clarify what you mean with your task. If you want to do some homework, perhaps you have different chapters you want to read or something like that. I'm not sure, but something like a subtask is just a task that is part of another task. When you complete all of the subtasks, that's kind of when you have completed a task. So it's always nice to be able to split it up, bring it into smaller parts so it's easier to digest, and that's kind of what you want to have in your To-Do application as well. So it would be quite a nice feature to add the ability to add subtasks to your task. And currently we have something like this. So if I do my homework or something like that, we have this edit button. We add this edit task modal where we can edit the task. And I feel like it would be nicer to put some subtasks here as well. But then it's not really edit task modal anymore, is it? Because we're not really editing the task anyways. We're no longer really editing the task. That we currently have this system where we can make changes here and they will only persist if you press the save button. But if you click discard, if you press discard here, you can see that that change was not persisted. It's not persisting unless I press save. It doesn't really make sense to have this save button if we're going to have subtask, because then you simply, if you want to save completed, I'm thinking something like a checkbox so that you check when you're completed with a subtask, and it doesn't really make sense that you have to click another button. It kind of adds to another step that user probably doesn't want to do that. If you check that subtask, then you're completely done with it. You don't want anything to do with it anymore, and then you simply close the modal or whatever. So I feel like it makes more sense to remove the save button completely and perhaps do something like when the modal is closed, perhaps when we click somewhere else, perhaps here we can have like a close button as well, why not? But if I click somewhere else here, then we can just save it then or something. But the subtasks will be saved immediately. So I'm thinking something like when you press that check, it will save that immediately. And why we're not doing that? We could do this on every keystroke. Whenever I press a button here, then we save it immediately. But I'm also trying to think ahead here when we're gonna implementing a server for this, and then it doesn't really make sense that we save on every keystroke, because then we would be making like a million requests. If you write an essay here in that field, you're gonna get a lot of bandwidth that we don't really need. We only need to have small, snapshots of what the user has written, and when the user feels done with that, they close the modal, and then we can simply save then. But for the subtask, we'll just check when you check that checkbox, and I'm thinking about things like renaming the subtask or deleting a subtask. Then we can also save, of course. And I also feel like we should do a small little refactor at the end to clean up the code, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Always good to clean up the code. Just like I said in the previous episode, we kind of need to slow down a little bit and actually look at our code and see what kind of monster we have created. Hopefully not that great of a monster. We can hopefully tame it in some beautiful pet or something, but let's have a quick look at that at the end of the video as well. But first I'm gonna go to edit task modal here and actually comment out these buttons. I think currently it doesn't really make sense to have them, just like I said, so we'll comment them out and see how that looks. So it definitely looks nicer now when we don't have save and cancel if we're gonna implement something else. And something else that I noticed is that we have an input field here, and that also doesn't really make sense. I feel like we kind of have this theme going on now where we have content editable. So we have content editable here. You can click here and just change it as it is written. Boom, I want to change this to Anward, and boom, it's saved. Nothing is completely modern and fancy. So it would be kind of nice to have that here instead. You can have a task title here and you can change it if you want. Otherwise, you don't need to have a fat input field. You can just have a little text. If you want to change it, then you click it. Something that I fixed in the meantime that I haven't shown on video is actually this thing here where the content editable had a weird outline on it by default. So you can actually turn it off really quickly here. I added this to app.css, the global CSS file. You can actually target CSS attributes like this, kind of cool. So we target the content editable and we simply remove the outline when we have that active. So you can see now we don't have that outline. So feel free to add that if you don't like that border like I did. But like I said, I think we should transform this into a content editable, and that should be hopefully really easy. So if I just do something like bind text content, so we bind the text content, we bind the inner text of this text content here, which we edit task. We don't need to have this anymore when we're binding. It's gonna complain because we don't have content editable. If we're gonna bind text content, we need to have content editable as well. So let's add that content editable true. And just like usual, we have spell checking enabled, and we don't want that. The user can choose whatever name they want. We should not judge them, unless you want to be like a grammar police or something, but I'm just gonna disable that real quick. So now we see that popped up. We have do my homework here instead of edit task, and then I can remove this input field. Boom! In my opinion, this looks a lot cleaner than having edit task. You kind of already know what you're doing. So do my homework. You can see the task tile here, and we can also change it out. So do my work. So since we have this save functionality, we only really save when we click the save button. But we kind of want to have that when you blur out here. So when you blur this title, when you focus out of that title, I feel like it would make sense to have on blur on that, then we save as well. So on task title blur, and then we can simply do save here. And we only want to save to local storage, I believe. So save to local storage. We don't need to close the modal. That is for the button. We don't have that button anymore, so just remove that console log as well. No need to have that. And on blur, so when we focus out of that element, we can do on task title blur and call that function. So hopefully that should work now. If I change it up a bit, and boom, it seems like it changed. At least we can see here that it changed quite nicely. So if I do something like pet the cat or something, and I blur out, boom, it changed when I blurred that, when I focused out of that content editable there. I guess we'll also do it when we close the modal. Just like I said, when you click somewhere else, you're kind of finished with whatever you were doing in the task modal, so it just makes sense to save it then. So on close, we can simply do save to local storage as well. So hopefully now if I rattle description, pet the beautiful cat, and I click somewhere else, I close the modal, boom, and it was not saved. Okay, let's see what that is about. So let's see if I console log here, if it's actually calling that save to local storage. Let's see. So if I write something here and close it, no, it doesn't do that at all. So I suspect this has something to do with this modal here. We probably don't really handle this. So if I want to do on close, do I even have this? Do I even have an event dispatcher for that? No, I don't. I don't actually know if the modal was closed by clicking the background. That's kind of bad. So let's implement that. Why not? So if I just create an event dispatcher for that real quick. So create event dispatcher. So then when we close, we can simply do something like dispatch close. So that is when you click the background and close it. So on close, we can simply do save to local storage here. Yeah. So this makes sense. We have a close function, but this also calls visible is false, and that is kind of what modal is doing already. So no need to run that twice. It doesn't really make any difference. We're just setting it to false 2 times, but no need to do that anyway. So on close, we just save to local storage right away. So let's see if that works now. So pet the most beautiful cat in the world. That's more like it, right? Boom. Yes, it was more like it. It actually saved it this time. Nice. Let's see if I can add a tag. If I do cat and close that, we can see that was added. If I reload, it's saved to local storage. Everything seems to be working fine. Isn't that awesome? So now let's add some subtasks. That shouldn't be too difficult, I hope. So we kind of need a model for that. We kind of need an interface for a subtask, and that should also be pretty easy to implement. So subtask data. We want to give this an ID as well, something to uniquely identify it. So we're going to be using something like a UUID v4. There's really no chance of collision like we discovered in one of the first episodes. So we're just going to use an UUID v4 for that as well. So ID. Then I guess we want to have a name for the subtask. So name string. And then we just want to have completed. We're not going to have some weird fancy statuses like planned or in progress subtask. No, we're just gonna have a clear-cut completed Boolean flag that says is it completed or not, and we're just gonna have a checkbox. When you check this, we set it to true, or we just use two-way data binding. No need to do any fancy functions. We can just bind that to complete it, and we click that, we check that checkbox, and boom, it's completed. So let's just write a little section here. So since we have a h2 tag for the title, I guess we use a h3 tag here. So subtasks. And let's see how that looks. I guess we need to kind of change the font size here. So text to XL, if I make this font bold as well, how does that look? Yeah, I guess that looks quite nicely. Empty4, give it some margin. Then I guess some margin bottom as well. And underneath here, we'll actually put that container. So if I just try to model my data, kind of a mock-up of how I want it to look. No need to bring in the heavy artillery of components just yet. We just kind of want to mock it up with some Tailwind CSS, see how it looks, and then take it from there. So I guess here we'll make this flex, and then we want to have flex cause. We can have a vertical layout, and then we want to have some gap between each item, so gap 2. And then for the subtask card, we want to have a divider as well, so maybe something like BG white. Well, it's gonna be BG white anyways, but border, and then we can have border gray 300. I think that's what we used before. So if I put something here now, nice, it seems to be working. Then we want to have some padding, of course. It's getting a bit tight there. That looks quite nice. Then I guess we want to have a rounded corner as well. We kind of have a rounded corner theme, you know. We're in 2023 now. Rounded corners is the real deal now. So let's put rounded corners, rounded, I guess. Yeah, that looks quite nice. So we have that. Here we will have the subtask title. So I guess we do something like subtask, put subtask name here. Then I guess on the other side, we will want to have like a delete button or something like that. I think that makes quite a lot of sense. So I guess we can add that with the help of justify content. But since we're going to have a checkbox as well, I guess we need to wrap this in a divider so that we can have some boxes around here. So if I do this and I put a checkbox here now, boom, we have a checkbox. But then I want to have justify between. And then let's put something on the other side. We're going to have the most extreme. We're going to justify as much space as possible between all flex items. So we're just going to put something like this, and that didn't work at all because we're not using flex. So let's make it a flex container, and boom, there we go. Isn't that nice? And then I guess we want to use our beloved Iconify library. So we have this nice delete button here, or trash can button. I guess we can use that, rip that off right away. So if I go here to board, you can copy this, and height 24, I guess that is fine maybe, or we need to import it as well, of course. There we go. Isn't that nice? It looks quite nice in my opinion. Then for a checkbox, I guess we want to make it a little bit bigger. So W width 3 and height 3. Let's see how that looks. Oh, even smaller apparently. Height 5, width 5. There we go. That's kind of what I wanted. Then I guess we also want to have items center to vertically align them. So if I do something like flex, and then we do items center, and we make this a flex container, there we go. And then we can have gap 2 between those. And there we go. Isn't that nice? I guess it is already centered, but in case we change the height of it or something else happens with the browser, we kind of need to be strict here. Say, yeah, it should always be vertically centered. So there we go. Looks just about the same to my eye. I don't know. So there we go. Isn't that nice? I feel like that looks quite nice. Kind of the idea that I have a subtask, we have a simple checkbox. You can just give it a name. No need to have any fancy stuff here. I guess we'll add some drag and drop in the future as well if we see it fit, because it could kind of be nice to order the subtasks or something. I'm not really sure. So I guess now the time has actually come to make this a scary component. So let's make a subtask component. So we have item here. I guess it makes sense to put it here. So subtasks, and then we can do something like subtasks.svelte. It will be the plural version, and that is the list of the subtask. And then we have actual subtask card or whatever it is. Then we can copy this big flex container, put that in subtask, and then we can take this subtask card and put it here. And then we can put a subtask here, and then in edit task modal, we can put the subtask list. There we go. Hopefully it should work, and it did not work at all because we haven't imported things properly. So let's import that real quick. And there we go. Isn't that amazing? So I guess now we actually want to take in this data as a prop. So hopefully that shouldn't be too difficult. Let's just do export let data, and the data here, the type of that data will be subtask data that we defined. And of course it needs to be TypeScript here. So let's add that, lang ts. And then let's import that again, or maybe not. There we go, subtask data. And then for the name, we just want to show the data.name. And then for the flexbox, so we bind the checked attribute, which is, if it's checked or not, and we bind that to data.completed. So there we go. It kind of broke since we're not passing in any data here. We kind of need to do that. Is there anything else we need to change here? I don't think so. So subtask. Now we can actually add an each statement here, so that I can actually loop over them. So I guess we need to export here as well, make a prop for that. So let subtasks, and then we want to have a subtask data array. And I forgot, this should also be TypeScript, of course. Subtask data, subtask data array. And then we can do something like each subtasks as subtask. And of course here we want to have a keyed each statement. Feel free to read about this if you haven't seen it. You kind of want to do this unless you want some undefined behavior. Svelte simply needs to associate an ID with the content that we are rendering here. So we're going to specify that as subtask.id, since that is what is uniquely identifying this subtask. Show here subtask. And then we can bind the data, two-way data binding, and that data here should be subtask. Let's end that. There we go. If I reload now, and I guess we need to pass in the subtask array as well. So I guess we can hard code this for now. We don't actually have that, or could we actually add that real quick? Yeah, we can do that. So I guess here in task, we kind of want to add a subtask array here. So subtask will be subtask data array, and that will be the subtask of our task. And then in edit task modal, we can simply do something like two-way data bind and two-way data bind subtask, and that will be subdata.subtasks. So now we're actually binding to the data, but this will break since we don't have that defined in our local storage, since that is from the previous version, the bad version. So I guess I'll clear my local storage, or it doesn't really matter. I guess I can just remove that item. And we also need to add that subtasks array. So let's do that in to-do item create here. Since it's already complaining about it, so let's put it here. So subtask, and we make it an empty array. We're not gonna have any subtasks by default, unless you want to have some tutorial subtasks or something. I'm not really sure, but there we go. So hopefully that should work now. If I add something here, we should actually see that it's not breaking, at least it's not crashing completely. We simply don't have any subtasks to show. So I guess it also makes sense that we want to be able to add a subtask. So of course we need to add an input field for that. And I feel like it makes sense to put this in subtasks.svelte, since this is kind of where we're rendering this subtasks list. I don't think we're going to have this subtask component somewhere else. We're simply just going to have it in edit task modal, or whatever modal we're going to call it in the future. But we can just put it here. So let's do something like input, and then we do type text. And let's see how that looks. Yeah, so W full, make it span the full width here. I just can also add a placeholder, add a subtask. And there we go. Isn't that amazing? I feel like that looks quite nice. And just like we've done a million times before, we're gonna look now for on key down. So whenever the user presses the enter button here in this input field, we're simply gonna submit that. We're gonna look at it and see it like we're submitting a form or something. And whatever data, whatever text they have written into this input field, we're gonna add a new subtask for. So we can do something like on key down, on input key down, and this will be a keyboard event. And then we're gonna check if e.key isn't enter, we're just gonna be returning early here. We only want to listen for enter key presses. Then we kind of need to have a variable here to bind that text data to. So I guess we can do something like add text or add subtask, or add something like add text or something. Not really sure what to call that. So we can just bind that event handler here. So on input key down, and then we can do bind value here to the add text. So this add text variable will contain whatever we enter in here. And let's just log that out real quick to see that it works. Let's see if that works, and yes it does. Isn't that amazing? And we can also empty that variable to make it look like we have submitted a form here. So let's empty that, and let's see. Yeah, that is exactly what I wanted. And then I guess all that remains is actually adding a subtask. So let's do that. And of course with Svelte we need to reassign it here to make it reactive. We can't just push to it like we would do normally. So we can use the spread operator. So we want to have subtasks, and then we want to add a new subtask at the end of the array. So we can do something like that, and ID, and of course we need to have that UID v4. I'm never sure how to import that properly, so I just copy it around. So UID v4, and then we can have a name here, which will be the add text, and completed will be false by default, of course. So let's see if that works, if I try adding that, and yes it does. Isn't that amazing? And notice that little tightness there, so let's add a quick margin here, and yeah, that looks nice, doesn't it? That seems to be working quite nicely. I guess when I check this, I guess we want to have that nice line through effect that we had in one of the previous episodes as well. So why not add that as well? So we can add a span for that to wrap it around. So span, and then we can do something like we can conditionally apply the class line through the Tailwind CSS class, and then we can apply this whenever it is completed. So this will only be applied whenever completed is true, and we can see that works. Isn't that amazing? So let's also add the ability to remove a subtask, and for that we need to wrap this in a span. Since that iconify icon doesn't really have an event handler for on click, so let's just wrap it in a span, and then we can do something like on click, so we can bind that to on delete. And then for the effect, this span doesn't have a pointer cursor by default, so you can just add that with Tailwind CSS, and hopefully, yep, that looks nice. And then of course we want to have an event dispatcher to pass that on to the parent component that we have deleted this task. So since that is where the actual array is, or where we have access to the array, so that we can remove from it. So we can add an event dispatcher real quick. So create event dispatcher, and then we can dispatch delete, I guess. Hopefully that should be enough. So here in subtask we can actually handle that. So on delete, then we can simply do something like delete subtask or something. And the data here will be subtask data. And then we can have an anonymous function to get that subtask here from the loop. So we can do something like this, delete subtask, pass that in here. And then we can simply filter it. We can retain all the subtasks that don't have the matching ID of the subtask that we are deleting. And hopefully that should work. So let's see if I can remove these now. And yes, I can, it seems like. Nice. So I guess now we have that implemented, and all that remains is really being able to change this title here. So of course we're gonna be using content editable. What else? Kind of got a real love for content editable right now, so why not continue using it? And that should be super easy as well. So we can just use content editable here, content editable true, bind text content, bind that to data.name, and set spell check to false unless you are a grammar police. And hopefully that should work now, and yes it does, we can actually change that. So I guess we got all of that functionality implemented. And all that remains now is actually saving this and actually persisting it to local storage. And it will actually be saved if we close the modal. So we can see then that there is some data stored here when I closed the modal earlier. But if I delete this now, we can see if I delete this and then close the modal and then reload, boom, it is saved, it is persisted. But if I were to just reload now without closing the modal, we can see that it has not changed. So we simply want to listen to different events that change the data. So whenever we change the name we want to save, whenever we click the checkbox we want to save, whenever we delete, and whenever we add a new subtask. Those are the 4 actions that we want to listen to, and then when those occur, we simply want to save the new state to local storage. I guess we can make it quite simple here by just adding an event dispatcher and just dispatching an update event. Just a generic update event. Something has changed, just save it, okay? So just create an event dispatcher for that. So create event dispatcher, and then on input key down, when we add something, we can dispatch update. And then when we delete the subtask, we can also dispatch update. I guess we can make this a function, no need to repeat ourselves here. So on update or something. So we got those 2 actions handled. Now I guess the only thing we want to have is for the subtask itself, if the completed state changed or the task or the subtask name changed. And I guess we want to do the same thing here. When we have this kind of text stuff, we want to handle this whenever we blur that, when we focus it out. So not on every keystroke. Of course you can do that if you're really concerned about your users' data and them not knocking on your door because all of their data is gone, then of course you can save on every keystroke, but I'm just gonna save it on blur. So that should be super simple. I guess we can create the same thing here as on update. So whenever something is updated in this data, we simply pass that on to the parent component. So on blur, we simply call on update. And then I guess all that remains is that checkbox. And that's kind of difficult since we have this data.completed, we don't really know how to handle this. I guess we can use an event. I guess we can use a vanilla event for this. So there's actually an on change whenever that data has changed, a vanilla JS event. But this event will actually be triggered before the actual data has changed, before data.completed has been changed by Svelte. So we kind of need to be careful with this. I guess we'll just use a set timeout or something. Whenever we get that on change, we just let Svelte do its thing before we actually save the value. So I guess we can do something like on change, and then we can do on completed change. Then a super simple set timeout. I guess we'll give Svelte 5 milliseconds. I think it's just like immediately after anyways, but why not be sure about it? So let's just put 5 there and hopefully that should work. So I guess we'll try it out real quick here. So if I uncheck that and reload, we'll see what happens. Does it save? No, it doesn't. Okay, that's kind of anticlimactic. So let's see what happens if I get something here, and yes I do, so that seems to be working. I guess we're just not listening for on update here, so that makes sense. So on update, so then we simply, or actually we don't need to do that, we can just use event forwarding since it has the same name. We don't need to call on update, we can just do on update, we forward it, we don't bind anything, we just forward the same event. So on update, hopefully that should work. So now if I change that, if I uncheck both of these and reload, and it still doesn't work. Okay, that's kind of a shame. So I guess I'll just log out here and on update and see what the actual data is, if there's anything wrong with that. So let's see here, completed is false. That is completely true. It being false is true, so there's that. And yeah, so all of this seems to be true. The data is correct here at least. So dispatch update. Let's see here in subtask, we're doing on update. Do we actually save anything in the actual like edit task modal? Are we doing that? No, we're not. So of course, nothing really works here. So on update, we just want to save to local storage here. So save to local storage, and there we go. Third time's the charm here. So let's try it out. Let's uncheck them again and reload, and boom. Yes, it works, doesn't it? Yeah. Let's see if I can rename something here. So buy some milk, and then we'll buy some cookies to eat with that milk. Then we can just pet the cat. We feel like doing that as well. So I guess I can check that as well. Just doing some user actions and seeing if it's persisting. So let's see if I reload now, and yeah, we got that data. Everything's persisted. If I remove buy some cookies, really not feeling like cookies today. We're just gonna be drinking some milk. And yeah, it actually seems to be working. Isn't that amazing? Write a description. We're buying some milk today. Let's see if that works. And yes, it does. Let's see if I can reload now. Check this without actually closing the modal. That is also a good test. And yeah, it actually seems to be working. You can actually add some subtasks now, and you can do that. You can reload. You can see that all of it is working. Delete these two, reload, and boom! Everything seems to be working. You can switch to another board here and buy some milk, and we can move that to completed, but we're still gonna have some subtasks in it. So we're milk number 1 and milk number 2, and then I can go back to endorsed and reload, and then I can go back to default board, and everything is persisted. Absolutely awesome. So now we have some subtasks implemented. Isn't that amazing? And how quick wasn't that? All thanks to Svelte just being awesome. I can't really express my love for Svelte in words. Everything is just so easy, straightforward, no questions asked. It just works like you expect it to. So I guess we'll actually now finally take some time to refactor our code a little bit. Let's see if there's some monster hiding in our closet or something, or is just some slight renames or some slight comments that we need to remove or something like that. Hopefully not a big work, you know. It only gets larger. This monster just kind of grows. We need to take care of it sometime, so let's do it real quick here. So I guess we start out with app.svelte, this big boy here. We got a lot of stuff in it. We have this import, we can remove that, and we have some other imports, just clean up the imports. We have this comment. I'm not sure, this is the old items task array. We're not using task arrays they're long gone. We have this nice new board set up. We don't want any task arrays. We can just remove that. Of course, you can keep the code commented out if you feel like you're gonna be bringing it back in the future, or if you're unsure about actually deleting it. Then of course it's always good to keep it there. But some of these things are definitely a thing of the past, and they're really outdated. So let's just remove them. This items map, I guess we're not really doing anything here. You can just remove that. I guess we're kind of repeating ourselves here with that statuses index. So I guess we can create a variable for that real quick. So we can do something like column index. I believe that is what our status is for. Yeah, so we have these statuses. They're simply mapping to a column index. So the first is planned, in progress, and completed. So we can just do something statuses at task status, and that will be the column index. So we can replace that here. No need to repeat ourselves. Keep the code clean here like that. We're also giving it a name, so it's a bit more clear what the code is actually doing. Then we have this nice map. We're simply just mapping. We're replacing it if it has the ID. Otherwise, we just set it to the previous value. I don't think that really needs to be commented. I guess it does make sense. You know, I guess in 2 months, I'm not going to have a single clue what this code is doing. But I guess we can comment this another time. We're just going to be cleaning up a bit now. Start task deletion. We have another commented code here. We can remove that. Then the same thing here, that column index. We're doing the same thing here. So let's just copy that. We're kind of repeating ourselves a bit here, I guess, that we can kind of have a look at. Are we doing something special here? I guess we're doing a filter instead of a map, so it does actually make sense that we are repeating ourselves, because we're not really repeating ourselves here. So I think that is fine to have a little bit of repetition. We could definitely make this even more general, but I feel like this is fine to have like this. So that is good. We have to-do items here. We have some old console logs. We can remove them real quick. Load from local storage. Let's see here. Yeah, we have some of this stuff. We don't want to put this down here. We have a kind of a theme going on. We kind of have a convention. We put the variables here on the top. That's at least what I'm doing. This is completely subjective, but I feel like this makes the most sense to me, at least. So, and then this on mount. I kind of put all of the code like this at the bottom. So all of this Svelte reactivity code I put here at the bottom. Let's sidebar visible. I guess we kind of want to put this at the top as well. We've got a lot of commented code there. So let's put that here, and then we have this boards here. This is the template boards. We kind of want to put this somewhere else, I feel like. So I guess we can move this out. This is just the default value for this array, but we kind of don't want to have this in app.svelte. I feel like it would make more sense to have it in something like model or something. So I guess we can do something like default boards template, and then we have a task board array, and that should be this. And UUID v4, we kind of want to use that here as well. I feel like that is fine. And then let's import that from somewhere, of course. There we go, default boards template. I guess we kind of want to have this in complete uppercase, since that is kind of the convention for cons. And then here in app.svelte can simply use that. So default boards template, and hopefully that should work as well. If I just clear my local store, see if that works still. So clear that real quick, delete that, and boom, it seems to be working. Except we have this current board ID that is actually not working, since we're setting this somewhere here. We have a UUID v4, and that's actually set from. We're actually setting that, we used to set it here. We also set that ID here to that current board ID. We're not really doing that anymore, so I guess the default variable here will actually be default boards template at 0. So we get the first board in that array, and then we get the ID of that board. Let's see if that works if I delete my local storage again, and boom, yeah, it actually worked now, so that's much nicer. Then we can scroll down here. This reactivity stuff, I definitely want to put this here close to the code, close to the HTML where the actual magic happens. This boring TS code, that can be to itself. This cool Svelte magic, we want to have it close to where it belongs, I feel like. So with this commented code, we can remove that. No, not using that anymore. We have this comment here, we're not using that either. And there we go. I feel that looks a lot nicer now that we don't have this old crap here anymore. Yeah, I'm actually liking the look of this app.svelte now. So I feel like that is kind of done. No need to overdo it, you know. We can just clean it up a bit, making sure it doesn't look way too bad, and that we can kind of read it all. We have like 170 lines, so there's definitely some parts here that we can definitely put into more component, definitely isolate a bit more, but we can do that in a future episode as well. So then we can go to modal here. Is there anything here? I feel like these things we haven't looked at in the previous episodes as well. We haven't really done that much change. We added this dispatch close, but nothing else than that today, and I feel like that is fine. We're doing that dispatch here. Yeah, so that modal is checked off and looking good. We have this button. We haven't changed this in ages, so no need to look at that. Then we have the edit task model, which actually looked a lot in this video, so we can definitely look at that. And we have these buttons still. I'm not really sure what to do about them. I guess it could make sense to have like a close button. It doesn't really make sense to have a save button anymore, since we're just saving automatically when we close the modal anyways. That actually kind of created a question in me. We have this text area. We're not actually looking for blur on that. So if I were to write something here and reload now, it will actually not persist. So actually good that we checked on that refactoring here. So of course on blur here as well, we also want to save to local storage. So this blur is also called whenever we focus out on the window or reload the window. So it should be completely fine to do on blur here. So instead I can do this and then I reload now and boom, it has saved. So that is great. So I guess we can remove this save button now and just make it a close button instead. So close, and I guess that looks okay. It looks weird to have a lonely close button there, but I feel like that's fine. So close here, we save the local storage, visible false. Yeah, that is probably fine. Boom, close, that works. Yeah, get that up here, boom, subtasks. Let's see, is there anything else here that we are gonna change? Guess we can clean up the imports as well. Other than that, it looks pretty nice in my opinion. Nothing else to change here really, so we can close that. Delete task modal. Looked at this, we can clean up that indentation there, boom, there we go. Sidebar, anything here to look at? Not really, that's fine. Board list, let's see here. So this accessibility stuff, like I said a million times, we're gonna look at that in a dedicated video, so no need to be worried about that I'm completely ignoring it. We're gonna be looking at that and actually taking lots of time to make our app accessibility proof. Nothing is that wrong with it, so let's move on. To do item create, here we got a lot of stuff. We have this item stuff, this old commented stuff, no need to have that anymore. So we can remove this export let items as well. We're not using that anymore. Can clean up this import. Nothing else to worry about here. And to do item create, to do item actions. I looked at this like a million times, so that's fine. To do item, anything else here? Not really. Tag.svelte. We got some to-dos to do here, but we're not doing that today. So that's fine. Tags, anything else? We looked at this. I'm very sure we have looked at this, so no need to look at that. We have the subtasks. Did we introduce some really bad code today or something? Let's have a look. I feel like it looks pretty good for the most part. We have this add text, nothing to worry about. Subtask. This data is up here, nothing here really. Yeah, so that looks fine. Close that off. We have checked them off. Completely done. Get out of my face. Yeah, this also looks fine to me. Nothing of great concern here, really. We have to-do board here. Anything here? Not really. It looks quite fine as well. Then we have this task file IO. This was like a million years ago. I haven't looked at this in ages. We're not even using it. So feel free to remove this if you haven't already. It's definitely optional to have this kind of saving to a file or something. I just thought it would be a cool thing to add, but I think we're actually going to be removing that in the future as well. We can kind of hide it or something. We don't need to have it like up here. We're not going to be importing and exporting that often. But other than that, I feel like we have kind of cleaned up the code now a little bit. It looks definitely much nicer. We also have this nice subtask, so we can buy some milk again. Buy some milk multiple times. So we can change this to buy some cookies and buy some cats, since we kind of want to do that. And buy some cookies is done. And we can reload that and boom. We're now completely done with buy some cookies. We want to remove it. We want to get it out of our faces. So boom, remove it. And it's no longer here with us, and that kind of sums that up. It kind of works, right? Doesn't it? So that is awesome. Really nice functionality that I'm happy to have in my to-do application. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, feel free to like it or dislike it if you didn't like it. And also feel free to comment if you have any ideas or thoughts or concerns or anything you want to share with me. I would love to hear about it. And also feel free to subscribe if you want to be part of this community that I'm trying to build. We are getting really close to 100 subscribers, which is really crazy. I would never thought to get any subscriber really. So thanks a lot for subscribing and sticking with me. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.